Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a business leader, you already know the deal. The technology running behind the scenes can either be your biggest bottleneck or your absolute best competitive advantage. Today, we're going to break down these major technical shifts, things like APIs, webhooks, and AI protocols, and map them directly to your business outcomes. We're going to uncover the real ROI, the hidden risks, and the strategic opportunities that are probably sitting right there in your infrastructure right now. To keep things hyper-focused, we're using the CLEAR framework today. So we'll quickly cover the digital handshake context, dive into integration limits and risks, look at some examples of modern efficiency, explore AI readiness with MCP, and finally wrap up with realizing true business impact and actionable steps for leaders. Let's get to it.
All right, part one, the digital handshake context.
So before we look at the future, we really need to understand how software actually talks to each other today. The absolute core of this is the API, the Application Programming Interface. Think of it as the ultimate digital handshake that connects your apps and databases. It's basically the set of rules that lets your software securely request and swap vital data. Whether a customer is swiping a credit card or your inventory is syncing up with your storefront, APIs are what make that entire conversation happen.
And every single one of these digital handshakes has a very predictable rhythm. It goes like this. First, the request. This is like a digital knock on the door using an HTTP method, like a GET or a POST. Second is processing, where the receiving server checks the routing and headers just to make sure you're actually allowed in. And third, the response. The server hands over the data like a little digital gift, usually with a status code, like a 200 OK, letting you know everything went smoothly. Super structured, right? But as we're about to see, this traditional way of doing things has some massive limitations in today's fast-paced world.
Which brings us to Section 2, Integration Limits and Risks. Here is where things get a little scary. When you scale these traditional handshakes across dozens of platforms, you hit massive bottlenecks, and worse, huge security gaps. 40,000, that's the staggering number of API-related security incidents reported in 2025 alone. I mean, wow. This isn't just an IT headache anymore. This is a boardroom-level crisis. Your APIs are quite literally the front doors to your company's most sensitive data. And frankly, a lot of businesses are still using really flimsy locks. A huge part of the problem is that legacy systems are still relying on basic API keys. Basically, that's like handing out permanent master passwords to your entire business. If a hacker intercepts one, they have the keys to the kingdom until you realize it and manually revoke them. The modern gold standard, though, is OAuth 2.0. Think of OAuth more like a valet key for your car. It's temporary and it only grants very specific, limited permissions, which we call scopes. The actual passwords are never shared. It's incredibly secure. But full transparency here, the trade-off is that it takes some pretty complex engineering to set up and maintain.
But beyond just security, we also have to talk about operational drag, specifically polling. If you've ever been on a road trip with kids asking, "Are we there yet?" every 5 minutes, you already understand polling. It's your server constantly asking another server, "Got any new data? Got any new data?" Let's put some numbers to that. If you poll every 30 seconds, you are making over 2,800 server requests a single day. If only 10 things actually changed in that database, you just wasted almost all of those requests. That is a massive drain on compute power, and it completely bloats your operational costs.
So how do we fix this? Let's move to Section 3, Examples of Modern Efficiency.
Instead of constantly pulling for data, modern setups use webhooks. Think of webhooks as real-time push notifications. So instead of you constantly asking if there's an update, the other system just promises to tap you on the shoulder the exact millisecond an event actually happens. The result? Zero wasted requests, instant reactivity, and your server costs only scale when actual events happen. It's a total game changer for your bottom line.
And here's another great example of efficiency, especially when dealing with authentication nightmares. Imagine being a developer wrestling with 40 different shopping platforms. A unified solution, like API to Cart for example, acts as a universal adapter. It automatically handles those complex token life cycles and securely encrypts everything, which drastically cuts down your time to market. A unified API collapses dozens of complex, wildly different systems into one simple, predictable interaction. You write one integration, and the unified API handles the rest of the headache.
Now let's look at what's next in Section 4, AI Readiness with MCP.
So, APIs and webhooks are amazing for static software, but they are just way too rigid for the new frontier. Agentic AI.
If your company is moving toward AI, you absolutely need to know about the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. This is a massive paradigm shift. Traditional APIs force developers to write really rigid code to hit very specific endpoints, but an MCP server? It acts as a dynamic gateway. It actually lets autonomous AI agents query and interact with real-world data directly through contextual intent instead of fixed endpoints.
Here's what that actually looks like in practice. Step 1 is intent. The AI expresses a business goal, like, hey, verify this customer's insurance coverage. Step 2 is orchestration. The MCP server dynamically selects the right data sources to get that done without any pre-programming from a developer. And step 3 is action, where the AI safely receives that verified context. It literally upgrades your infrastructure from rigid, hard-coded links to highly adaptive, intelligent interactions.
All right, bringing it all together in Section 5, realizing true business impact.
We've talked tech, but let's translate this into revenue, risk, and operations. As a leader, you don't need to write the code, but you absolutely need to understand the strategic trade-offs being made. Look at this decision matrix. If you've got high-frequency data living inside internal, close systems, polling can actually be the right call. But if you need immediate reactivity for sporadic events, like a customer finishing a checkout, you really have to go with webhooks. Matching the right tool to the right operational need ensures you aren't blowing your budget on unused compute power or losing frustrated customers to laggy load times.
And here is a little secret of truly enterprise-grade reliability. The best architectures actually combine both. You use webhooks for the fast path, getting that instant real-time reactivity for big events like payment confirmations. But because webhooks can sometimes get lost if a server blinks offline, you keep polling running as a safety net. It acts as a backup catch-all to guarantee zero data loss. You get the real-time speed with an ironclad guarantee of reliability.
So what's the actual ROI of modernizing these digital handshakes? It's huge. First, a much faster time to market. With unified APIs and MCP, your engineers aren't constantly reinventing the wheel, they're actually building features that drive revenue. Second, significantly lowered server costs because you aren't wasting compute on polling empty data. And third, automated security compliance. Upgrading your systems protects your company from those 40,000 annual API breaches by baking in strict access limits right from the start.
Let's wrap things up with Section 6, Actionable Steps for Leaders. I want to leave you with some immediate takeaways. Here are 3 concrete actions you can bring to your engineering leadership tomorrow. First, mandate OAuth 2.0 with strict scope limits to completely replace those risky legacy API master keys. Second, audit your polling processes. Any system polling sporadic data needs to transition to webhooks. You'll save on compute costs almost immediately. And third, start evaluating your infrastructure's compatibility with MCP right now so you are fully prepared and AI ready when the time comes.
I'll leave you with this one thought to chew on. As you look at your tech roadmap, is your infrastructure genuinely built for the AI era, or are your systems still just standing out in the cold, continually knocking on digital doors, hoping someone answers? It's time to make sure your digital handshakes are ready for what's next. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.